This is the first in a series of videos I'm going to put together on active shooter events, particularly focusing on events that happened in the US from 2000 to 2012. When I talk about active shooter events, I'm talking about things like Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, that sort of thing. In order to give you a better feel for what I'm talking about and set the stage for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to play some 911 calls from an active shooter event that happened in Clackamas Town Center Mall in 2012. Here are the 911 calls.
You have reached Clackamas 911. Do not hang up. For help, after the tone, say help.
Hello? 911 location of your emergency?
There's shooting here at Clackamas Town Center.
Okay, I need you to get yourself to a safe location. We have help on the way, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
Town Center, there's a shooting.
Okay.
Clackamas Town Center, we need people here.
Where at the town center?
We're at Macy's upstairs fragrance.
Who was shot?
I don't know. I'm hiding underneath the register.
Okay, my partner's going to be dispatching help while we're talking. Whereabouts in the Macy's do you think the shooter is?
It's got to be upstairs around the food court. All the alarms are going off. Grace, where are you? Grace!
Hold on just a moment.
What? Grace! I'm sorry. Sir? Sir? Grace!
Did you actually see this, or are you just hearing this?
No, it just was a horrid, like 15, 20 gunshots right outside the entrance to the upstairs of Macy's.
Okay, I'm going to disconnect with you. They're already dispatched. They're on their way. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So when we look at these events, there's one primary question we're trying to answer, and that is, how do we save these people's lives? In order to do any kind of research, you have to have a definition of what you're looking at, and we do have a very complex definition that we use when we conduct the research. I'm not going to bore you with it during this video. Instead, I'm going to tell you that in a nutshell, when I talk about an active shooter event, I mean a situation where somebody went to a location with the intent to commit mass murder with a firearm. We don't have any limit on the number of people that were killed during the event, like you oftentimes will see people talk about with mass murder events. And the reason that we didn't put a limit on that is that we felt we could learn just as much from situations where very few people were killed as we could from situations where a lot of people were killed. So after we had our definition, we started looking for the events themselves. The first place that we looked was newspaper articles, and in particular we used LexisNexis to search through article databases, looking for search terms related to active shooter events, school shootings, mass shootings, that sort of thing. After we identified the events in the newspaper articles, we then reached out to the police agencies that were responsible for investigating the particular events and tried to get the police reports on their investigations. Some states, it's very easy to do that. They're very open. You request it, they give it to you, no problem. Other states are much more restrictive, and it's much more difficult to get that information. We were able to get police reports on about half of the events that we looked for the reports on. In order to get more information, we also looked at the FBI supplemental homicide reports. This is data that police departments report to the FBI. The FBI then aggregates that data and releases the information. Due to the nature of the events, we were oftentimes able to go through the supplemental homicide reports and identify the particular event in those reports and get more information on the event that way. This is a map that has the basics of what we found. The small dots correspond to attacks where up to 4 people were shot, the medium-sized dots up to 9 people shot, and the large dots 10 or more people being shot. And I'm going to let this roll out for a few seconds so you can get a feel for how they're distributed. You can also see they're starting to increase the rate at which they come out. And you should notice that these are occurring all over the country. There really isn't a region you can say it never happens here. You can also see there were quite a few attacks that happened from 2000 to 2012. We identified 110 active shooter events during that time frame. Most of you can probably only name a few of them off the top of your head. And the reason for that is that oftentimes the media doesn't report these attacks if they're not a big sensational attack and they didn't happen in the right media market at the right time in the media cycle. This is what the attacks look like by year. And this is the trend line. You can see an increasing trend in the number of attacks. In particular, what we saw is an increase around 2009. Before 2009, we saw an average of about 5 attacks per year, or a little less than 1 every other month. Since 2009, we've seen a little bit more than 15 attacks per year, or a little bit more than 1 every month. That's also a 300% increase, and people get very excited when I bring that up, but I want to put a couple caveats in place first. First of all, it's possible that there's not been a real increase, but instead we're just more able to find news stories on these events. Because we did search through newspaper archives, maybe the archiving got better, the searching got better, so we're more able to identify the events. The other thing is that while this is a large relative change to itself, a 300% swing, we are still talking about a small number of events, going from an average of 5 to an average of 15, so a change in 10 events. It's not like we're talking about going from 500 to 1,500 events. And whenever you have small numbers like that, they're liable to change and move around somewhat randomly without any underlying cause. It doesn't take much to make them shift one way or another just because of random chance. That being said, it does still look like in our data there's been an increase in the number of events, and we see that increase has continued on into 2013 as well. And whenever I talk about that, I get that million-dollar question, which is, what's causing that? And again, I don't know. Our data doesn't allow us to answer that, and I don't want to speculate on it without some solid data to point back at and say this is why I think that. So instead I'm going to dodge the question and give you some more information about what these events look like. This is the number of people shot and killed per year. And you can see, just like the increase in the number of attacks, we're seeing an increase in the number of people shot and killed. It does not appear that the attacks themselves are getting more dangerous or deadly. Instead, it seems like more people are just being shot and killed because more attacks are occurring. This is the number of people shot by event. This is not a normal bell-shaped distribution. It's called a skewed distribution. Most of the numbers are clustered on the left-hand side toward the smaller numbers. And whenever you have that, giving the mathematical mean as the average can be distorting and inaccurate. So instead we use the middle score or the median to give the average. In this case, the average number of people shot per event is 5. This is the number of people killed per event. And you can see it's also skewed. In this case, the median number of people killed per event is 2. So 5 people being shot, 2 people being killed. Most of these events are not the big mass casualty events that you see all over the media and that sort of thing. So that's one of the reasons that oftentimes you don't hear about them a lot. So what do I want you to take home from this presentation? The first thing is that it looks like events are becoming more common with a few caveats. And also more people are being injured, not because the events are becoming more deadly, but just simply because there are more of them occurring. I also think it's important whenever you give people information like this, particularly for something that's as spectacular and attention-grabbing as the active shooter events are when they're covered in the media, that you put them in some perspective. Otherwise, people tend to have a higher level of fear about these than they should. Your chance of being shot in an active shooter event in any given year is about 1 in 3 million. Now that chance is so small that it's hard for most of us to get our heads around and understand what does that really mean. So it's helpful oftentimes to give people some sort of reference to put that in the proper perspective. In this case, I'm going to use the chance of you being hit by lightning. The U.S. Weather Service estimates that your chance of being hit by lightning in any given year is about 1 in 500,000. So compared to the 1 in 3 million chance of being shot during an active shooter event, you're about 6 times more likely to be hit by lightning than you are to be shot in an active shooter event. So these events are rare, they're uncommon, and you should keep that in mind when you see the events reported in the media. That's not to say I don't think they're important. Obviously, I think they are. That's why I do research into this kind of thing. But it's important to keep these things in perspective. I wanted to end by giving you a few references here to point you to some more information if you're interested in the topic. This is our book, Active Shooter Events and Response. It's available on Amazon. It's also available from CRC Press's website. That's the publisher. And again, it just has more information on the events in general and also how the police respond to the events. This is our most recent published information on the events. It's in the FBI's Law Enforcement Bulletin. You can just go to the FBI's website, search for Law Enforcement Bulletin. It's in the January 2014 issue of the Bulletin. You can download it for free. And this is a different line of research that we're involved in that's related to active shooter events, but looking at police tactics and how to most efficiently do things. I'm planning to do videos on this in the future, so I figured I'd introduce it here. And in the next video, I'm planning to go into more depth, more detail about these events, particularly looking at how the events end.